hear about tonight with him. And just as we talked and the more time we spent together, we realized his heart and our heart are very similar. And so we've been dreaming about, praying about a partnership and what that looks like. We were trying to bring him here in April of 2020, and COVID shut all of that down. So we've weathered that storm. He had an opportunity to come back to the U.S., and so he's been gracious enough to come and be with us tonight. And then after he leaves here tomorrow afternoon, he's going up to D.C., and then he's going to spend a couple of weeks in Canada making some rounds up there. But if y'all would, I'm not going to talk all night. Welcome TK Azaglo, Future of Africa.
Thank you. Hello? Oh, there we go. All right. All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Wes, thanks for inviting me, and thanks for making this possible. It's great meeting some of you guys today, and thanks for inviting me. I appreciate being here. So as Wes mentioned, my name is Tawomanya Kwesi Maoli Azaglo, but you guys can call me TK for short. If you want to call me Tawomanya, you can try as well. So before I go into the story, let me tell you a bit about where I'm from. So I'm from Ghana. Ghana is a country of about 31 million people along the west coast of Africa. This is my family. I'm married to a lovely young woman called Nikki, and we've got two kids. Elomi is 3 years old, and our daughter Lola is 16 months. They can't be here right now. They are still in Ghana, and I miss them so much. So as was mentioned, I am the founder and president of an organization called Future of Africa, and we work with children and youth who live in street situations in Ghana. But I'm going to backtrack and tell you a bit of my life story as to how I got here and how I got to doing this work at Future of Africa. So 2006, I left Ghana for Canada. My dad works for the UN. He got an opportunity through the UN's educational grants to send me abroad. And I went to a school in Canada called Wilfrid Laurier University. And I went to this school for business and economics. My dad is an accountant, and his hope was I would also become an accountant so that I can come back home and then run the family business. Now, when I went to Canada, I struggled a bit because, as you may imagine, Canada is a bit very different from my reality in Ghana. When I got to school, there were a lot of students asking very ignorant questions about Africa. Students were asking if we ate dirt back in Africa, whether I learned how to speak English when I came to Canada, if we lived in trees in Africa, what's the capital town of Africa? And at the time, I was dealing with a lot of self-confidence, self-esteem issues, and I also didn't know a lot about the continent. All I knew was Ghana, and even in Ghana, I knew about Accra, which is the capital city of Ghana. So how then do I become an ambassador for the continent and educate students about the continent that I didn't know about? So because I didn't know how to respond to all the ignorant questions, I started telling students that I was from ATL. Because in my school, I realized there were different levels of being black. So there were Africans, there were African Canadians, and there were black students. Right? And I wanted to be a black student. I didn't want to be African. The black students were cooler. They went out to the bars and, they had fun, they danced and did all these cool things. So I tried so hard to fit into this stereotypical image of black in America. So Young Jeezy, Lil Wayne, T.I., they were my role models. All I did for pretty much the bulk of the week was watch these videos and try to fit in so hard. But what this meant was I spent very little time on my academics. And to be honest, I felt intimidated. Anytime I went to my classrooms, and often I would be the only black person in the classroom. And when I spoke, because I had an accent, people would turn and look at me. And I was already dealing with my own self-esteem issues. So I thought people were looking at me in judgment, right? So I stopped going to class. I didn't really care for it. At the end of the school year, I failed a bunch of courses. I got some 3Fs, a couple of DECs, and I was on academic probation. The dean of students called me to the office and said, hey, if you don't bring your grades up, we'll have to kick you out. Now, this particular incident created a lot of tension at home, because my dad was saying, hey, we are spending so much on you, paying international fees for you to go to Canada, and you're failing in school. So we want you to come back home. And I said, no, I wasn't going to come back home. Then my dad threatened not paying my fees anymore. And then I told him, well, I know the UN is paying my fees, and if you don't pay my fees, I'm going to report you to the UN. So we negotiated, and the agreement it wasn't an agreement, but pretty much he said he was not going to send me pocket money anymore. So at the end of that semester, I was in trouble. I didn't have any family in Canada. School had ended. I didn't have anywhere to go. And I needed to find ways to make money. And because I was an international student and I had failed, I couldn't even apply for a work permit. So I had a few friends. One said, look, I could hook you up with some people who sell weed. And you could sell weed, make some money for yourself, and then cater for your expenses. But then I thought to myself, well, I could do this, but then if I get caught, I'll probably get deported. And what this means is I'll probably be sent back home to my dad, and I didn't want that. So another friend said they knew about pharmaceutical companies that before they release any medications into the public domain, they test it on animals. When it passes, they test it on human beings, and they pay you well. So I signed up for this test with a company called BioVail. And they locked me up in this facility with other guys. It was illegal immigrants and ex-convicts. So in this facility, every morning they'll give you medications, you take them, and then they'll take your blood samples to see what the medicine is doing in your system. So I did the first one. They paid $4,000, and apparently you're supposed to wait for, I think, 2 months before you go for another one. But one guy in there said, if you drank a lot of cranberry juice and ate a lot of prunes, it's going to clear your system, and then you can go for the next one. So they told me the hack to the system. So I did that, and then within 2 weeks, I tested for another trials, and I qualified. So then I did two trials in a month, and I earned about $8,000. And that was the money I used to start taking care of myself. But something interesting happened in that facility. There was a guy who went to jail for hacking into the government's computer systems. He was teaching me how to hack in that facility. So he taught me a skill, and that skill got me my first real job in Canada when I went back to school, because the IT help desk, they were looking for some student help desk analysts. So I went for this interview, and I was telling them about how vulnerable their security systems were. Then I got a job. So in hindsight, I see this as the hand of God, right? So while I was in there, feeling like I was alone and I couldn't figure out what I was going to make out of my life, God was still there, directing me through this guy and providing opportunities for me to get a real job. Fast forward to the following school year, there was a global citizenship conference at my school, and this gentleman, Romeo Dallaire, came to Laurier to talk about his experience in Rwanda. Romeo Dallaire was the UN force commander in Rwanda during the genocide. So he came to my school, and he was talking about how he was going against the UN's orders to save people during the genocide, because the UN had asked him to pull out, but because he cared so much about saving humanity, he didn't leave. So I was very inspired by this guy, and at the end of his keynotes, I felt led to ask him a question. And this was a very difficult experience, because right up until that point, I had never said a word in classroom because I was intimidated. Because back in Ghana, I was taught unconsciously that the whites were better, they were smarter, and I felt intimidated anytime I went to the classroom, so I couldn't speak. So I was sitting in a room like this. It was an auditorium for about 2,000 people, and there were bleachers. So I was sitting up on top somewhere, and this guy was on stage. It was question and answer period time, so he asked people to come line up to ask questions. So then I remember getting up from my chair, and I was physically shaking, worked my way down the stairs, and then I lined up. And I was just praying that this guy shouldn't call me, because I didn't even know how I was going to ask the question. I was so nervous. Then he said, the last person to ask the question today is you. So then I turned around. He was like, no, you the one turning around. So I'm like, shoot, so I have to do this. So then it was my turn, and I asked him, what do you think the future of Africa is, and why did you do what you did in Rwanda? And he said that the future of Africa lies in the hands of children and youth who take leadership responsibilities for the issues they see around them. And I was really inspired by this. I started thinking to myself, this guy is Canadian, born and raised, but he loves the continent so much, he's embracing the continent so much, and he was putting his life on the line for people that he didn't have any direct connection to, right? So what am I doing? What am I doing pretending I'm from Atlanta? I had never been to the US before. So what is it? So after he said that, I responded to him that I am the future of Africa, and I'll do everything it takes to make a difference. Then the room went silent. And then what felt like a minute, people got on their feet and were giving me a standing ovation. And I'm like, wait, what is going on right now? I felt like the ground should just open up and swallow me, because I was so nervous, and I was stunned by people's reaction. Then there were mothers coming to me saying, look, TK, you said something really powerful today. I wish my children were like you. I'm like, no, you don't. So at the end of the conference, this guy called for me and said, he was inspired by what I said, and he wanted to see what I was going to do with it. So the local newspaper wrote an article about me, and I got to share my dreams and ideas about what I said, this comments I made at this conference. Fast forward to the following school year, I started a campus club at Laurier called Future of Africa. And at the time, the goal of the campus club was to educate students about their misconceptions and stereotypes about the continent. We organized documentary screenings. We invited these different speakers in to talk about various realities in African countries. And the club grew. There were so many students coming, and people were inspired by what they were learning. We're trying to change the single story narrative about the continent, because very often when you go on most of the popular news outlet channels and you Google Africa, there's a single image, single story that's often depicted. You hear about the war, the poverty, the diseases, and you don't often hear about development or progress. So I felt like we would use this platform as a means to educate students on things that they don't see on the popular media channels. So we won Best New Club of the Year, and things were going well. We're really pumped about what was happening with Future of Africa. Sorry, I had a presentation with at University of South Carolina, so I was supposed to use some of these slides. It didn't work out, so it's all mixed up in here. Anyways, in 2009, I decided to organize a trip to Uganda, because we started to think, instead of telling students about Africa all the time in the classrooms, why don't we give them an opportunity for them to go to African countries for themselves and see what the reality on the ground was. So we did some fundraising on campus. We got some soccer equipment, got some refurbished computers, and brought some money. We went to Arua, Uganda for 10 weeks to set up a chicken coop. So in 10 weeks, we built a chicken coop. We set up a computer lab, and we felt we were contributing to development in this community. Another experience I had in Uganda that was pretty transformational was meeting this baby Eric. Baby Eric was born with cerebral palsy, and because of his disability, he was hidden. He was kept in a room for 3 years, and he wasn't allowed to come out because the village believed that Eric was cursed. This story was very sad, and I was actually very heartbroken for this baby. They had tried going to different hospitals to find out if There were options for physiotherapy for him, but they didn't have the equipment. I ended up buying an equipment for baby Eric, and it was $70. Started thinking to myself, um, baby Eric's quality of life had been impacted drastically because of $70. Um, I couldn't understand it. I was pretty surprised by that. When the time came for us to leave Uganda, one of the locals, the carpenter who worked with me on the computer lab, asked me, "So when are you coming back to Uganda?" And I said, I don't know. And he asked, "So who's going to look after all the projects that you guys started here?" And I said, "You guys. We did it for you." Then it dawned on me that we didn't ask the locals what they wanted. Right? So we're just a bunch of privileged students who were studying in a global studies program, and we thought because we had learned about development, we knew all about development. Right? So we didn't ask any questions. We're pretty arrogant in going there, bringing all these resources, and then implementing projects without the locals' consent or asking the locals what they needed. We went back to the school the following school year, and I got a call from Uganda saying all the projects we had established had fallen apart. The computer labs, the business ran down, the computers were stolen, the soccer equipment were stolen, the chicken coop, somehow the chickens all disappeared. Then one of my lecturers was teaching us about local ownership. The idea that don't go into a community where you have no idea what their needs are and try to implement a project. Instead, figure out what are the locals doing about their own issues. How can you work in partnership with the locals so that long after you are gone, the project that you worked on will be sustainable. The locals will continue working on it. So then I decided, instead of going to other African countries, I'll go back home, go back to Ghana. So in 2010, I went to Ghana with a couple of my friends, and we visited a few villages to figure out what projects we could be a part of as an organization. We ended up in my village. I realized one of my aunties and her late husband started a school called Small Child Academy. And after the husband passed, the school was falling apart. So this became Future of Africa's focus. Every summer, we would take students from Canadian universities to go to this village to renovate the school. So we did this for a few years, and we noticed that the enrollment in the school increased from 23 students to about 130 students because we built additional classrooms, and the community had more hope that their students would have access to good quality education. Now, renovating this school and building the school became Future of Africa's focus. So the first focus was educating students on their misconceptions and stereotypes. Then it evolved to bring in Canadian students to this village to renovate the school. Now, when I graduated from university, because of my community engagement and bringing students abroad, I won a National Leadership Award in Canada. And when I got back to school, one of the vice presidents of the university called and said, and asked, "What are you doing after university?" And I said I was going to move back home because I believed firmly that the knowledge and skills that I had gotten at the university was better used going back home. Because a lot of students, a lot of young people leave the continent and they don't want to go back because they believe there are more opportunities for them out here in Western countries as compared to back home. But then if we are all leaving and we are all complaining that the continent is not developing, who's going to do the work? Right? So I was a firm believer in let's go back, let's use some of our knowledge and the skills we've gotten to help develop our own communities. But then I was given a 3-month contract to recruit students like me from African countries. So the first year they said, go to Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, and find us students like you. So I went out there, did some recruitment, and they saw that more students started applying from those countries. Then I was given a 1-year contract, and they said, look, take the entire continent. Figure out what countries you can go to and find international students like you. So I did that for another rotation, and then the enrollments or the applications increased again. Then the school gave me a full-time permanent contract and gave me Africa, the Middle East, Caribbean, and the UK to recruit international students. So at 23 years, I had a really good job. I was loving life. I bought a Honda Accord Coupe. I was getting carried away, right? And a part of my heart was at home, going back, using my knowledge, my skills, resources to contribute to development. But then I was also getting enticed by the money I was making and the fame I got, at least on Instagram. My life looked really cool. I would travel in between 5 countries in a span of 2 or 3 weeks, and it felt great. But anytime I went on recruitment trips, there will be students who are coming from privileged homes who are asking to leave the country. They want to go abroad and study. And there'll be other students who are coming from poorer homes. They were looking for scholarships, and I couldn't provide that for them. So I started thinking that I was still contributing to the problem instead of being part of the solution. Right around the same time, I met this man called Jeremy, and Jeremy became my mentor. I met Jeremy because I spoke at an event in Waterloo, and I was sharing my dreams for the continent. I said I wanted to build community centers across Africa. And someone connected me to Jeremy because he had led a team to Ecuador to do similar stuff. So I shared my heart with Jeremy, and Jeremy decided to journey with me. But then I told Jeremy that I didn't want anything to do with faith. Because when I came to Canada, I threw everything about faith out. Because back home, faith, Christianity was shoved down my throat. I didn't understand what it means to be a follower of Christ. It was just part of the culture. You wake up every morning, every Sunday you go to church. 72% of the population in Ghana are Christians. But then Jeremy told me about what he was doing in Waterloo and encouraged me to move into this neighborhood in Waterloo. It was a low-income community, and I saw how he served people in this community, how he journeyed alongside families who were coming from war-torn countries, and he was helping their kids with summer camp activities, advocating on behalf of the families. And I started asking him, why do you do what you do? Why do you care so much about these families? And he said, because my father would. And I asked him, what do you mean by that? Who's your father? So Jeremy said, look, he would like to journey with me, and we started reading the Gospels together. And he encouraged me to look at Jesus as a role model, right? So let's cut all the fluff out and just take his lifestyle, what he did on a daily basis. He drilled it down to the values of service, compassion, justice. And he said, what you're doing when you take students out to that village, you are demonstrating some of these values, right? So if you don't want to call yourself a Christian, just think of the values that you're living life with and just focus on that, because that's what is close to God's heart. That's what was closer to Jesus' heart. So while I was still working at the university, every summer I would take students to Ghana, and eventually I just felt the need to move back. So in 2014, I resigned from the university, and I decided to move back home. And it was quite an emotional experience, and it was a moment of uncertainty because I didn't know what I was actually going to go do home. I had an idea of establishing a business, but I wasn't sure because at the university, people knew me. I had some status, but when I moved back home, I don't have any of those to fall back on. Moving back home was hard because I had changed. My values had changed, the way I looked at life had changed, and I started exploring what it meant to be a follower of Christ. But when I went home, there were so many circumstances or social issues that I saw around me that made me question faith, that made me question Christianity. For a country that had 72% Christian, why do we have children as young as 8 years old sleeping on the streets? Why do we have persons with disability lying on the floor begging for money? Yet every single Sunday, we dress up in our fanciest clothing, drive the fanciest cars, and go to big mega churches and pray to God. We drive by all these people, go and pray, and then come back, drive past them, and go to our homes. And we don't stop. We don't ask any questions. I encountered a young boy called Bismarck one morning after dropping my brother off at a bus station. And the first time I saw him, I drove past him. Then I started thinking, well, you're acting like all the other Christians, right? And if I'm calling myself a follower of Christ and I'm going to live out the values of service, compassion, justice, I need to go engage this kid. So I turned around and I went to meet this boy. I'll come back to this story. When I moved back home, something significant also happened. My grandfather called me one afternoon and told me a pretty moving story about my own life. Turns out that I was adopted. And he told me the story when I was 26 years old. My birth mom was raped when she was 15. When she was 14, she had me when she was 15. And I was born in a village, and my auntie, my birth mom's elder sister, came to the village with her husband to come visit. And at 1.5 years old, I packed my clothes in a plastic bag and sat in this guy's car. And my grandfather said, well, you guys are looking for a kid. He doesn't want to get out of your car. He's yours. My grandfather named me Towomanye. Towomanye in my language means I am yours. So when I was born, they were having a lot of hardships. My grandfather had just been ordained as a pastor, and a lot of his peers were saying, no, this is not good for your career as a pastor to have a daughter who's been raped. A lot of people encouraged him to get the daughter to abort the baby. But he stood his ground, and he believed that God had a plan for this baby. Matter of fact, when my grandmother had heard that her daughter was raped and pregnant, my grandfather was preaching at church that evening, and he was talking about this family who's going to go through a hard time. A child will be born out of wedlock, but this child God had a plan for, and someone was going to step in this child's life, take this child to Canada. Like, these were the details. Take this child to Canada, and one day this child is going to come back and bring some glory to this village. He didn't know he was telling his own story. So when the sermon was over, my grandmom went over to him and said, look, you might be talking about yourself, because this is what I found out. Our daughter has been raped and she's pregnant. So when my grandfather told me this story, it brought memories back to when I used to bring students to our village in Olito. One day he called me and said, TK, what you're doing here is divine. You might not understand it now, but a few years down the line you will. So he brought me back to that point and said, remember when I told you that? What are the chances that someone came to this village, took you out, provided opportunities for you, you went to Canada, you could be whatever you wanted to be, but you decided to come back and invest in the same kids in the village, right? So he was pretty much saying that what someone did for me, I came back to the village and was doing for other kids. So I was pretty shaken hearing that the people I knew as my parents for 26, 27 years were not my parents, and it turned my world upside down. But I also learned about love, that someone stepped into my life and gave me unconditional support. He provided for me, allowed me to go out there, and he was there for me, right? So I learned about unconditional love, and taught me about how I should relate to the kids that I engage with on the streets. I'm going to show you guys a video that tells a bit of the story from when I met that kid, and then after the video, I will continue with the story.
Accra in the street is not easy. We have many challenges. They have been using air conditioning, so when we will go and sleep there, when the mosquito tries to drink our blood, the air pushed the mosquito aside. Me, I've been getting malaria. So we have been sleeping and people have been complaining that why these people are sleeping there. Because many bad people looking for us, and then they will use a stick or a stone or a belt to hit us or cane us.
The place is too dangerous. Sometimes some people pour glue into other people's ears. Some of them will steal your things. You can't bear to stay there.
We used to clean the car glass, and then they will give us money in the traffic. Many people have been begging with us, the people that have the blindness and then the cripples. When you are walking around the city, people will say, in future, these are the people that they will become thief.
So one day I was just returning from dropping my brother off at the bus station, and when I got here I realized there were some kids playing next to this wall by the mall. And when I saw them, I was a bit conflicted. I was wondering, why are these kids here? Why are their parents? And it was a little cold. And I was thinking a lot about faith and our responsibilities as Christians. We're supposed to live life like Christ. And he spoke a lot about the values of service, compassion, justice. And I felt guilty about just driving away. So I went around the roundabout and then went back to where the kids were. And as I drove closer, my heart started beating faster because I didn't know what questions to ask them. But I did it anyways. When I got here, I noticed one of them was up, and I rolled down my glass. And I called him over, and I asked him, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "This is why I sleep." He said he goes over to the intersection to wipe windshields. Sometimes he makes enough for a meal a day. Sometimes he goes to bed hungry. The day I met him, he hadn't eaten since the previous morning. I decided every weekend I would make jollof rice, and then I'll come into the street and hang out with these kids. And I made a promise to myself that I'll be consistent. And then even if they don't talk to me, I'll still show up anyways.
I'm standing by the wall, I wonder if your eyes could talk, what would they say? What would they say? And now we're walking in the streets, I see how hard you must compete for what they have, for what they give to you.
So TK started working with our kids on the street about 3 years ago, and I joined him a year ago after we got married. And our progress really developed organically. It kind of showed itself over time as we were present and were faithful in joining the kids on the street and understanding their reality. It kind of became obvious to us what we needed to do. It's not easy to walk up to a street corner where there's a whole bunch of kids that everyone else deems wild and like social deviants. That's really intimidating for a lot of people. What I've experienced in my own life is that you have to embrace that discomfort of leaving your area of expertise, your comfort zone, and you have to be daring enough to go beyond whatever that physical or mental barrier is that gets you to the other side where other people are, and you realize they're not just other people, they're human beings with incredible stories to tell you.
Every Saturday we run this street outreach program. In Accra, there's an estimated number of about 65,000 kids living in the streets. But every week we see about 80 of them. This is the time they tell us about their week, what went wrong, what went right. If some of them have any health issues, they talk to us about it. If we can provide first aid on site here.
I'm going to wrap it, but you have to keep it dry.
So this is our time to really connect and bond with them. Menya sure say mukwa ubetina school mwere na munso ubetina
So me na my president.
Professor your president. I have a few students from Ashesi University, University of Ghana that come into the street to hang out with the kids living here.
Waiting for my children. And then we'll have a conversation about how they envision their future. That's the topic for discussion today.
I met TK 2 years ago when he started working as a chassis, and I started talking about how I'm involved with children, and he also opened up to me about his organization, Future of Africa.
And for me, it goes beyond what they are being taught in the classroom. It's more about how can we immerse them into context where they can understand the nuances of leadership.
And I decided and agreed to visit one Saturday on the streets.
Say, count 5 years if we in there.
Now where we going for? What's it? These kids whose survival is daily. It hit me real hard because it just kept bringing to mind so many things about why they are here, where are their parents, what happened to them, is everything okay, are they okay, are we doing enough, we're not doing enough, we need to do more.
And as much as they do need food and they do need clothing, they need relationship, healthy relationship, somebody to tell them, I want to listen to you. What you have to say matters. I value what you have to say.
So the hope is one day we wouldn't have any of these kids here. We have a school we are building in the Volta region of Ghana, and that school is to give them that formal education. About 8 months ago, we took our first 2 kids off the streets, and they are doing really well in the school in the Volta region.
I was staying with my father in a place called South Labadi Estates, and he was staying there with his siblings. But sometimes I grow too stubborn to the extent that he beats me. Sometimes my hand will be swollen, sometimes I can't walk well. But because of that, it made me run away from home, and I lost the first school I was attending.
Cyril, I met him in the town called Legend Village. When we are there, we have been talking, walking, playing football.
So I thought Patrick was having the same ordeal. His father wanted to beat him.
And that, my father sacked me, and then me and the boy went to the street.
Just there one time, then Bratike came. I told him that I want to go to school very badly, more than anything.
The Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth, as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread.
When they born me, I never went to a preparatory school before. I don't know how to read. I don't know how to write. Now I know how to read small, and then I know how to write small. And Bratike to see me like that, I have future. He will let me to continue. So I feel happy that I'm in here going to school because of Bratike and Madam Nikki.
I want to be a doctor because they are able to restore people to health. I like it a lot. Some doctors even put away their free time to use to take care of some children and some other patients. I like it.
First, I want to be a rapper. I want to be a footballer. I know how to play football. I want to be a bank manager. And also, I want to learn Bratike life, how he's helping people. And me too, I'll follow him, helping people.
Well, on the street, most of the times, if it's raining, you don't have anywhere to go. So you just have to endure the rain. And being here, there's security here, there's authority here, and I like it that way. Because being here is much safer than being on the street.
and Patrick were our test cases. My wife and I decided to bring them into our home. We opened our home up to 6 kids, 0 were the first 2. They lived with us, and it was probably one of the hardest things we've ever done, because these kids were rough. They had experienced so much on the streets from their homes, so much abuse, so much trauma, and it was hard for them to trust, right? And I was still working at the university at the time, and I'll wake up in the morning, go to work, and my wife, who was newly married, she had just moved to Ghana, had no friends in Ghana, they didn't understand the culture. She was the one dealing with these kids while I was at work. And this was pretty rough. But it also opened our eyes to how deep the issues were. So these kids are running from home, not because they prefer to live in the streets. There was one night I slept on the streets with them, and the mosquitoes were biting, and the cars are driving right next to you, and you're inhaling fumes and dust. Instead of asking yourself, if these kids choose to sleep here, then whatever they're running away from in the house must be more severe than what they're experiencing on the streets. Something interesting that happened was, at the time I was working at the university, there were a lot of students coming to my office talking about wanting to become leaders in Africa. And I would say to them that, we can't sit in the classroom and learn about leadership, right? Why don't you come with me on the streets so you can experience the nuances of leadership? But I also saw this as a ministry opportunity, because there are a lot of young people in Ghana who are jaded by Christianity, because the pastors, a lot of the pastors figured out how to just manipulate the word to take advantage of people, right? But what we are doing, we bring the kids on the streets and we immerse them. We bring the students on the streets. We immerse them into some of the things that I believe Jesus or God would be paying attention to if he were in Ghana. There are so many times I would argue that if Jesus came to Ghana, you wouldn't find him in some of these churches. You would find him sitting on the floor with these kids, providing food, providing first aid, and hanging out with them. So then I was inviting these students to come and experience that, because I think Jesus has a heart for social justice, and that's what I was encouraging them to do. There were times we'll go to the streets and we wouldn't find some of our kids. We'll roam around. There's this girl, Joyce, the one in the black jacket. When we met her, she was saying, she was having some stomach pains. Turns out Joyce hadn't eaten since the previous day, and she was just really hungry. There were times that we'll go to the streets, and the girls would tell us that they've been raped. A lot of the girls get raped on a weekly basis. We'll take them to hospital, and they'll get diagnosed with STIs and all kinds of infections. And there's no justice for them. There's no health care for them. They're on their own. If we don't show up, nothing happens. There was one time my wife and I went to the street to administer some medicine, and the police had just come to the streets and beaten up the kids, because someone had called the police saying the kids were being too rowdy. And when they beat them up, they left them on the streets. So I put the kids in my car, drove them to the police station to ask questions, and somehow the police were trying to flip the script. They were saying I was taking advantage of these kids, and I pretend to help them, but exploit them. They ended up putting the kids behind bars that night because I was insisting that they provide health care for the kids. Long story short, nothing got done. This same girl who was starving showed up a few months later, and she was pregnant. We got her home, met her mom. She had lost her dad. The situation at home wasn't good. When the baby was born, this girl returned to the streets with the baby at 4 months old. We went to the social welfare department, so Children's Aid, and they said we need to go to the police. Went to the police station. They also referred us to a different organization, and ended up going to a church who had an orphanage. And the church said the person in charge of the orphanage had traveled, and they'll get back to me. So we ended up bringing this girl to our community center because there was no support. Another incident that happened that I would say really shook me and changed the trajectory of our organization was this boy, Aaron. Aaron climbed a billboard, an old billboard, to cut off the material during the rainy season. And usually our kids use these materials to build shacks in the bush when it rains so they can protect themselves. And while he was up on the billboard, apparently the police showed up and asked him to run. And while he was running, he got shot. So I got a call saying this boy was shot. I went to various police stations to find out if any of the patrol teams had shot this boy. And everyone in every police station, I think I went to about 3 different police stations, no one reported a case of shooting this boy. Before this boy died, he said he was shot by the police, but there was no one to corroborate the boy's story. I insisted that the police did their investigations, and the police commander, one of the police commanders, got really upset with me and said, look, if you are so keen on this, why don't you go do the investigations yourself? So I went to the morgue, pulled the boy's body out, noticed there was an entry gunshot wound, but there was no exit. So I figured maybe there might be a bullet in there. We insisted that this autopsy was done. The police said we had to transfer the body from the morgue to the police hospital for this autopsy to be done. After a lot of back and forth, I was given a plain sheet of paper that said close-range gunshot wound, trauma to the chest, excessive bleeding. I was on social media, I was on radio stations trying to figure out what happened to the boy and seeking some justice, but nothing happened. We ended up burying the boy. These experiences made me realize if these kids are going to get off the streets, we needed to do something different. So we dreamt up the idea of having a community center, a space that would become a safe space for them to transition through and then get off the streets. So I have another video I'm going to show, and this video reflects more the current state of affairs at Future of Africa, what we are doing with our community center.
My name is Rebecca Kpeto. I am 16 years old. I am from Obom. I was living with my grandma in Andor. So one day, my grandmother was dead, so then my father took me to Nigeria. So I was living with my father and my stepmother. One day, my stepmother sent me on an errand, and when I went, I got missing. And the police found me. They put me on TV. Nobody came for me.
My name is Taumanye Kwesi Maoliazaglo. On the streets, they call me Bratike. I am the founder and president of Future of Africa. These kids are victims of situations in which they were born into. The average Ghanaian who sees these kids just see how stubborn they are. But no one really understands that this is beyond a social problem. This is a public health problem. This is a health issue, because these kids, before they get on the streets, have experienced all kinds of abuse. The girls are often sexually assaulted by people in their families. So sometimes they run to the streets for refuge. But on the streets, they are further abused. They get traumatized by all these experiences. So then they resort to sex, drugs, gambling to mask these problems. And then they go into a state of depression, into a state of anxiety. So then how do you get these kids off the streets? And expect them not to run back to the streets when they are triggered by different things they experience.
They took me from Correctional Center to Ghana Embassy. So I was staying there for 3 years. One day, the man took me in a car, brought me in Osu Children's Home. and the food was not good, so I ran away with my friends. Like ye chinchin, ye ni baby atina, ye chinchin, ye be wa yetimi kwada kanta, yetimi kwada ye boy so ena adechia ye nya baby nsonda ni ye chinchin. The yan say be ho atare be fene ato na ya she. We go to Opebia. I couldn't find my friend again. I was walking around and a girl took care of me. His name is called Agnes. So Agnes was giving me weed to sell.
I think the biggest way that Future of Africa has transformed my thinking is, like everybody else, I would drive up to a traffic light and there will be a kid who just comes out of nowhere and starts spraying my window shield and cleaning it, and I would get frustrated with them. But now I'm a little bit more empathetic. I understand that they're there for a reason. They're there out of necessity, not necessarily by choice.
It is difficult getting girls off the street because they are often raped on a weekly basis. And we hear about these cases quite often. These girls struggle to stay in school because they're not used to routine, they're not used to discipline, and they're not used to being in a confined space. They're used to freedom, right? And also they're used to making money because they get raped multiple times. Sometimes they're thinking to themselves, if I'm going to get raped, I might as well make money out of it, right? So then they get addicted to sex, and that's also part of the problem why it's hard to retain girls.
I did not know that I was pregnant, and that day my stomach was paining me. And he said, what is wrong with me? And I told the woman that my stomach. So the woman took me to his house, give me hot water to bath. When I'm done, the woman gave me food to eat. He told me to sleep. I couldn't sleep. She and his son took me to hospital, and they said I'm pregnant and the child have died in my stomach. She did medicine for me, and when I drank it, blood was coming, and she let me sit on hot water. And Ajobi, Adechinye, Okoko Jareme, and a friend is saying, Akolani Toy, Ewe Jaro.
We also have quite a few needs around understanding the mental health challenges that these kids have, the reason they went into the streets and what they grapple with while in the streets. And it takes a lot of mental health therapy to help them kind of stay off the streets, because there's a family that's built when they're on the streets, and that's what they're used to. So we have kids who've run away and gone back to the streets, even though we're trying to provide a safe environment.
I decided to become involved with Future of Africa because I started seeing the impact that TK and his group of students from Ashesi were having, and I felt like they had a model that worked, and I felt like TK is somebody that I want to root for and get behind.
Well, to start with, Future of Africa, I see it as a lifestyle, not a chore or a job. When I was in senior high school, our house got burnt. That was when I felt to be homeless. So my family, we had nothing. With the help of family and friends, we were able to come out of this situation. I knew that there were other people in the same situation. They have no homes and they have no one to help them. They just need a helping hand to come out of that situation. And I felt deep within me to help. When I got admission at Ashesi University, TK, who was the then Associate Dean of Students, was giving a presentation, and he made mention of Future of Africa, and this really resonated with me, and I knew that this is where I needed to be. I started going to the streets every Saturday with some of the volunteers from Ashesi, and I've been a part of Future of Africa for all my academic years in Ashesi.
The most powerful thing I've seen working in FOA is love. because everything that happens here is based on love.
And I make sure be say on search future of Africa, mommy. Just search here and I'm home now, Bratiki number, and I'm a fine, I'm a friend. Until Ebanis and I make first can I am the boss so can and I'm a frock and I'm a bedroom. I cry. Tia Tracy and I buy. Tia do your manage.
Rebecca was one of the girls that moved in when I assumed the position of the facility coordinator. And when she came in, there's been times that she will be feeling sad, she'll be down. You get closer to her and then she tells you that I have done a lot of things out there and I feel right now I'm wanted. Are you sure God still loves me? And when we learned more about how God shows us love, she was very happy. And then I also encouraged her not to walk out of this place. I tell her that you have to focus and you have to work hard. You have to tell yourself that I am beautiful, I am loved, and I tell her a lot of motivational words.
So very often we get asked, why do you do this? What are the core of the work you do? And my response is our fundamental belief. At Future of Africa, we believe that all human lives are equal in value and have immense potential. Like every single life, regardless of what neighborhood you were born into, what family you were born into. By the fact that you're alive, the value of your life is the same as mine, is the same as the president's, is the same as everyone, right? So we don't want to write anyone off because we believe their lives are very valuable. And we also believe in young people because everyone keeps saying young people are the future. They've got a lot of potential within them that if nurtured, if given mentorship, if given the right circumstances, they can thrive and contribute to development, contribute to progress. There's another gentleman, Isaac Andor. We met him almost 6 years ago, and he also was one of the kids who lived with Nikki and I in our home. He actually had a rough go because Isaac was born with polio, and because of that he was ostracized, and that's how he ended up on the streets. When we took him off the streets, he was living with us. We realized he was sick. He was dealing with epilepsy. One night he had multiple seizures in our home. We got him to the hospital. Thankfully, we were able to provide the healthcare he needs, and we enrolled him in a school. He learned leatherwork. So now Isaac is able to make bags that we're hoping to sell to raise some money for Future of Africa. But also, we are still working with him to perfect his skill, equip him with some soft skills so that he can one day also become independent and be on his own. We have Rebecca Pato, who's been able to graduate from school as a hairdresser, and we are currently working with her to perfect her skill so that she can establish her own little store and work, make money, and contribute to society.
See, I'm a beautician. Meeting a wig, meeting a closure, meeting a bokon, meeting a borasta. That's what say. A big company. I mean, animal like almost on Wall Street and so maybe on my cage, I was school common. Now meeting a form and I'm a child. To see a manager because no bright future, and I'm going to be seeing our journey home. Yes.
As the organization continues its work, more and more leaders will come along saying, hey, these children living on the streets have stories, they have hope, they have joy, they have potential, and we're not going to let them suffer through this anymore. We are going to make a change, and we're going to not let this problem be acceptable.
My name is Richard Okai, and I was once on the street, and now I'm an overall scholar. I'm doing well in school, and I want people to come on board and help the street kids, for them to be like me. Now I'm in school and I'm doing well.
We often get the question, how can I help? How can I be a part of this? And my response is in multiple folds, because I truly believe that we are not called to solve this problem alone. In fact, the problem is too big for any one individual, one organization, or even a government to solve. right? If you're an organization, a business, you care about this issue, get in touch with us and let's discuss how we can work together to solve this problem. We need financial partnership. We need people to contribute their knowledge, their skills, their resources. Whatever skill you have, how can you contribute that to help us improve the work we do here so that we can make a bigger impact?
To volunteer in this space, you need to be committed. You need to be faithful to whatever that you want to do here, and you have to be consistent with it. You need to be available. Your presence means a lot in this space, right? You need to always show up.
For young people who also are looking for ways to get involved, we need volunteers. We need people who can come to our community center to hang out with the kids we've already taken off the street. We need people to participate in reading circles, people to just play, hang out. The work we are doing is possible because of people who support us financially, people who support us with prayers and donating in-kind stuff. Because honestly, the costs are a lot, and we believe in going the extra mile to make sure that we give the kids our very best. Thank you to everyone who's believed in our work, because honestly, we cannot do this without you guys.
Since 2016, we've reached over 1,000 kids. We have 14 of them who are in school or pursuing vocational training. And we have about 25 university students who come with us on the street to serve, and we've reunited about 30 kids. We have a plan, a 4-year plan to get kids off the streets. Year 1 is focusing on their well-being, getting them access to counseling, therapy. Years 2 and 3, we focus on technical training. I would argue we don't need more academics in Ghana. We need more people who have hands-on skills as carpenters, as plumbers, so that they can build the infrastructure for development. So we're at a point where we want to increase the number of kids we get off the streets. So right now we have 14. Next year, we're hoping to bring this up to 25 kids. And it's going to cost us about $10,000 a month to get 25 kids off the streets next year. Now, my presence here in the US and in Canada next week is to generate more support, have people who identify with our passion, who feel led to journey with us, to support us as monthly donors. We're running this campaign. There's a donor who's pledged $10,000, and he's asking that we find 50 other monthly supporters who would commit to joining with us so that we can redeem those funds. The problem is growing. You saw the numbers, 200,000. In 1994, there were 4,000 kids on the streets, right? So if we don't do anything, this problem is going to keep growing. And the hope I have is not only in the lives of the kids who are on the streets, but also the university students, right? They are the future leaders of the continent. They are engaging these kids, and one day when they're in a position of power to make decisions, they'll make right decisions because of the relationships they built with the kids. So that's us. These are ways people can support our work. And I would maybe pause here and ask if you guys have any questions for me. I can take them, and then after I would invite Wes up.
Quiet group tonight, no questions. All right, well, maybe as we hang out and break down, maybe anybody that has a question you want to him up TK and ask him, that'd be great. All right, Charles got a question.
How big is the city that y'all are in?
Accra has a population of about 3 million. Okay. Yeah. So there is this QR code.
This was my part.
Well, you can take it away.
So here's our. So let me just say this. I've heard TK's story now since January of 2020 about 7 different times, and each time that I hear it, there's another layer that has been revealed. But here's what the consistent thing is the vision and the dream that God put in his heart to serve others, and how much it is in alignment with our vision to not just go to church, but be the church. I think he didn't use those words, but you hear that in his story, right? To be the hands and feet of Jesus. And so we are looking at ways that we can partner as a church, but there are absolutely ways that we can partner as individuals with Future of Africa and with TK. And here's the easiest way to do it right now. You can take out your cell phone and you can aim it at that QR code. Open your camera and aim it at that QR code, and it will pop up a link to the website, the donation page of his website, okay? And here's what you can do. You can close out that page and act like you did something without doing anything at all. Or hopefully, you'll click on an amount, or maybe click on the box that says custom, and you can put in an amount, whether it's a one-time donation, or whether you can click the box at the bottom that says ongoing monthly to show your support to Future of Africa. We would love for you to do whatever God leads you to do in that. As he said, if he gets a certain number of new contributors and partners, he stands to receive a $10,000 grant from another donor, which is awesome. And so I will unashamedly ask you to do something, whether that is a one-time gift or whether it's a recurring monthly gift, and also to share this with anybody and everybody that you know, folks in your home group, folks at work, folks at school, folks that you come in contact with. This is an incredible mission and ministry. And they're doing incredible work. And we've been over there. We've had a chance to go to the street and to hang out with them. And so we're looking at ways that we can send more people from Cedar Creek to Ghana to hang out with TK and with his staff and volunteers and to get a taste of this and to see what work is going on over there. So I greatly appreciate all of you coming out tonight. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your attention and your heart. And thank you for all of those of you who are going to do something tonight to contribute financially, be a part of that. Yes, Kelly has her hand in the air. The QR code thing is not working. Hang on. All right, it just worked for me. So that's what the IT response is, right? The IT response is always, well, turn it off, turn it back on. It worked for me. All right, so it may be a projector issue on this side. I apologize, y'all. This side is working. And also, Kevin, for those of you that are watching online, Kevin is posting the link to the donation page in the chat of the video, the stream that we've been doing tonight. So that will be there, instant, permanent, and global. It will stay there on YouTube and on Facebook. But if you want to run across and just take a shot of that real quick, that would be awesome. Here's the most important thing that you can do for TK and for Future of Africa. It's pray. He mentioned that. We're going to do that, and then I'm going to let y'all get out of here because I know your kids are probably restless and you're ready to go get them. I will say one more thing. Yeah, so 100%. One of the greatest things that we discovered when we were there was TK's strategy and method is very similar to ours in that they don't just show up to the streets and feed a soup line and put Band-Aids on people and send them on. They sit down, I call it nose to nose and toes to toes, right? They get in a circle of small group. His volunteer leaders meet with a small group of kids, and they play games, and they ask questions, and they learn about them. And it's exactly what happens week in and week out in Kids Creek and in Center Point. And so thank you to those of you that are a part of that are doing that, pouring into kids and students on a weekly basis. It's the same thing. And we know that shared experiences and relationships is what it's all about, right? And so people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so doing those things that build relationships is our heart, and it's their heart as well. And so we've been talking about how our hearts are the same for the last couple of days, and so it's just great, and thank you for bringing that up. Thank you for those of you that do that, and those of you that are kids in Kids Creek and students in Center Point. That's why we do it. It matters, so keep showing up, keep inviting your friends, keep bringing them on Sundays, and give them an opportunity to be a part of that as well. I'm going to pray. If anybody, question, Charles? How did we meet? So when we went to Ghana to see Steve and Angel, Angel was already familiar with TK. They were in a church circle and some friend groups and stuff like that. And also some of the kids that Steve and his team were rescuing off the lake, Lake Volta, TK was working with as well at the community center. And so we got word from Angel that TK had some needs, and we put it out, and y'all donated white T-shirts and socks and laptops, and we took a bunch of 7 suitcases, I think, full of stuff over there. And we got to meet TK then, and we got a tour of the community center, and then later that week on Saturday night got to go to the streets and hang out with the kids as well. So, Christy. Yes. So this is going to be instant, permanent, and global online because I've not gotten authority for any of this. But what I told TK today was that my hope and my dream in my heart was that in 2023 we were going to send a team to Ghana. We're not going to be able to do it in 2022 because of the way that we plan our global outreach trips. And 2023. Yeah. 100%, absolutely. Yes, thank you for that. We will get an interest list before we get out of here tonight, and I will keep you involved and keep posting on this Facebook page as we get updates from TK and all of that, and I would love it. It's a great trip. Here's the thing about Ghana. It's cross-cultural, but they speak our language, right? Sounds a little different, but we speak the same language. And so in some ways, in my mind, it's easier to go to Ghana than it is to go to Guatemala where they don't speak our language. But I love Guatemala, and we go there too. So I'm not selling that. I told TK, that's my places. So anyway, yes.
We also have the brochures, right? I don't know if that's been given out.
That's right. So before you get out here tonight, we have some brochures, some booklets. They were at the cafe. Is that right, Steph? They were in a backpack? Okay, so stop by the cafe, grab one of the booklets that has more information and all the information of giving. That's on there as well. Okay? Awesome. Anything else? I'm going to pray. All right, let's do that right now. Father, I thank you again. Lord, we just thank you for today and thank you for tonight. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and to hear from TK, to hear from his heart the story of the journey that you have had him on for many years. And it's just evident, the more that I've heard him speak, and even tonight as he has shared, how evident it is that you have ordained this story and this journey from the very beginning, and how you have shaped him and called him out, Lord, to be a leader among his people in Ghana, how you have called him back home. You sent him out for a season to shape him and to grow him, but to deepen the passion that you've put in his heart for his community and for those all around him in his country. And so, Lord, we just continue to pray for him and for Nikki, for their family, for their provision, professionally, personally, resources, financially, all of that stuff, God, that you would continue to do what only you can do. You are a God that owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, and you are, everything is yours, God. And we just pray that you would make their path straight, give them favor and blessing in this ministry as they continue to reach out to street kids, continue to rescue kids and give them medical help and psychological help and all of that, all that they're doing. Lord, and we just thank you that you have given us the opportunity to partner with him, to partner with Future of Africa, and we look forward to what you're going to do in the days and weeks ahead. We love you, we thank you, and we pray all of this in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. Amen. Oh yeah, that's so punchline. Go ahead, punchline to how he met his wife.
Well, so I spoke about my mentor, Jeremy. So Nikki is Jeremy's daughter.